Welcome to the Married People Podcast, where we help you make marriage real, fun, and simple. Each week, we have honest conversations about one simple thing that can make your marriage better. Because when your marriage is better, everything's better. I'm CJ, and sitting around the table today, we have our resident newlywed, Afton.
That's me. I mean, hi. That sounded stupid after I said it. It sounded really lame. So.
And we have our 22-year marriage veteran. He's an author, speaker, and the director of marriedpeople.org, Ted Lowe.
That's me.
That's awesome.
It's like Mickey Mouse show.
That's our new intros. And you guys
That's
don't know,
me.
but we are pointing at ourselves with our thumbs when we say that's me.
That's why we got to get that video podcast thing going,
We've got to
right?
start rolling this on video for sure.
Everybody really wants to watch this for sure.
They want to watch podcasts.
Well, friends, we are, what is this, episode 17. We are 17 episodes in. And before we get to this episode's question, I just wanted to pause and ask you guys, because we're getting close to the end of the year here, how's it going? And how do you think the Married People podcast is going so far? I want to talk about takeaways. What are you guys thinking 17 episodes in?
What do you think, Afton?
You know, I'm just going to be so honest, guys, because
When have you ever not been?
I just am always so honest all the time, every second. Like, I came into the Married People podcast thinking I'm going to have these conversations every day. I mean, you know, however many times a day we do these podcasts.
Every week, but
Right.
maybe to you it feels like every day.
Week. And I'm going to leave feeling like I'm doing everything bad and wrong, and I need to do things better and righter, and like feeling like a burden of like, oh, you should be doing this better. But I am very happy to say that I feel like every time I leave our podcast, I feel lighter, and I feel like I know what to do. Like I feel like I had something practical that was easy that I would actually do that is like an intentional way to make my marriage a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I'm happy about that.
You know, I think that's awesome because and when we started the podcast, Ted, I don't know if you said this on air or off of air, but you said if our marriages are not getting better in the process of recording these podcasts, and if we're not walking away, just like Afton said, with something practical and feeling like, okay, I can do that, then we need to stop and reevaluate, because I mean, our personal marriages will reflect, you know, what some people listening to this might be experiencing as well.
Well, and how many people actually like sit down with their coworkers or their friends and just talk about their marriages? Like, I feel like I've never done that before. Like, I mean, I've only been married for 2 years, but also like, I don't like sit down with my friends at dinner and be like, so how's your marriage? Like, what are you and what are you and your spouse doing? It's just like, oh, what are you guys doing this week? You know what I mean?
Right. And we'll sit down and evaluate tons of other categories. We'll sit down and talk about finances. We'll talk about even with friends, you know, talk about some of those kinds of things. You talk about work and getting better and leadership, whatever it is, but you rarely sit down and talk about marriage, one of the most important, you know, parts of your life. And so, Afton, has there been, you know, speaking of takeaways,
because I'm
and
the
stuff,
real test here,
right? And
I'm the real test of if this podcast is a success.
You really
Which is,
are.
I know why you chose me, Ted. You're like, let me pick, like, I'm going to pick Afton and see if she gets basically the most improved award.
because if Afton can change, then there's
Anyone can.
Well, if there were 5 reasons that I chose you, that would definitely be in the top 5. No. Teasing.
So,
all I want is a most improved trophy from you
you've
guys.
already earned that, Afton.
Thank
really.
you.
But so what's been the biggest takeaway for you personally so far, you think?
Okay,
If I can
biggest
put you on
takeaway
the
for
spot.
me personally. I mean, I really liked early on when we did. I feel like one of the things that really stuck in my mind from all the podcasts we've done is the micro moves episode. Or the micro move, I don't know if we call them episodes, but that conversation we had, because I felt like
So episode 1 or 2, and it's been downhill from there.
and ever, you know, all 15 episodes from there, I can't remember, but
No,
I
that's
felt
great.
like the micro moves episode was just, I felt like the phrase stuck in my brain for some reason. Like, for some reason, the term micro move stuck in my brain, and when I'm like going about my everyday life, I think of it. I keep thinking of it over and over again. Like last night, Hudson went to go get Julian from lacrosse practice, and he had just made all of this dinner, and there were a bunch of dirty dishes, and I was like, maybe I should do the dishes while he's gone. Then after you eat, you don't have to clean dishes, and that's like the best feeling in the world. So I go to start doing the dishes and I open the dishwasher and the dishes are clean. Isn't that the worst thing in the world?
In the world.
It's the worst thing in the
100%
world.
100% for me. I hate it.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
It's a moral dilemma.
Do I really want to double micro move? Because that's like a quadruple micro move for me to unload all the dishes and reload. And I did, guys.
See?
And Hudson noticed. Because I was like, did you notice that I did this? But still.
And that's okay. That is okay. That is awesome.
That's really
What
cool.
about you, Ted? Ted, what do you think so far, and what's your biggest takeaway?
I think so far the thing I've loved the most, and you guys are going to throw paper at me right now, but I think doing the podcast with you two has been knowing how crazy busy you both are, knowing that you have...
Which is what we're going to talk about later.
Yeah. Watch out. Everything's
Segue.
about the transition, isn't it? Which we're still learning around here.
For sure.
Just that you guys have taken the time to do this and that you have poured yourselves into it personally. Like I see that you have cared, and we've had conversations offline, and often it means the world to me that you feel like you went lighter. I'm walking away lighter, and something I could do. Like I felt like for so long being in marriage ministry that was the word I used. I don't want people to walk out feeling heavier. I want them to walk out feeling lighter. And so long we've just given so much content. People feel heavy or they feel defeated. And so for you to say that, it means a lot. It means a lot because I knew that both you guys were going to be honest too. I knew that you were going to represent the listeners in a lot of ways. You guys know my heart, but maybe some of the listeners don't know my heart. And what you guys have done is done such a great job about being real and transparent and pushing back. And so I've loved that piece of it. Yeah. I think the one piece of content that's rocked my world came from episode 4 when we interviewed Shanti Felhan. And I realized that while I'm a kind person, that when people are unkind to me, I am unkind back. Like it's a knee-jerk reaction. And I've watched that go, wow, I really thought I was kind, to realize, well, anybody can be kind to kind people, right? So I've realized that, Nancy and I've worked through so many things. We're really careful with each other, but it came out more than with my kids. And so it really slammed me to go, wow, when they're unkind, which they're teenagers, happens a lot, I'm unkind. So I think that has really rocked me to my core. I'm still figuring it out. Like I don't have this really great revelation where now I'm kind when everybody's unkind. I love it when people are unkind to me because it gives me an opportunity to practice this micro move.
Right.
No, it's kind of the opposite, but it is something I love. I think awareness is always a huge thing. So,
That's awesome.
But I thank you guys for doing this.
It is our pleasure, Ted. Where else can we walk into your house, throw our stuff down, and be like, Ted, give me all the advice. What do I do?
For sure. Yeah.
It's the best.
Well,
You're
guys
just
have
our
been-
friend.
This has been fun.
CJ, did you even share yours?
I can. Sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So my biggest takeaway is there was one where the one simple thing for me was putting my cell phone down when I walk in the house and leaving it on my desk for the first 30 minutes I'm home, just to give my, Terry my presence and that kind of a thing. And that has been huge. Like it's just become a habit. It was hard obviously at first, but having that first 30 minutes at home uninterrupted, just totally devoted to just reconnecting with Terry in that moment we felt it. We've felt it over the past several months. So that's been really, really cool. And, it just, as far as how's the podcast going, this has been a lot of fun for sure. And I think we've all loosened up a good bit too, which is making it even better as we get more comfortable.
It makes us nervous to do a podcast. CJ?
No, it is.
It makes us nervous. What if they don't like us on the other end of these?
And what other conversations do you engage in that you're having to think like, now how are we going to transition this conversation to the next point? Or
That's all
something
you,
like that?
CJ.
Yeah.
You know that
but
we
it's-
don't do that. We just wait for you.
Yeah, after we shot our first episode, the producer was here and we got done. Okay, let's redo this thing. Ted, you're not going to be in charge of transitions at all. We're going to let CJ drive this train. And Afton, you just be Afton. So
I literally walk into this place not even knowing what we're going to talk about. You guys
That's great.
just put a mic in front of my face and are like, well, let's talk about this thing. And I'm like,
see,
Yeah.
you're
I
our
love it.
But you're our listener.
I love it.
You're the
great.
listener. You're not ahead of
so
the listener.
fun.
Yeah.
You're not even
So fun.
a little bit ahead of the listener. So that works out great.
Well, speaking of the listener and speaking of what we're actually talking about here
What a good
today.
transition, CJ.
You know what?
There
I
you
was
go.
hoping you'd say that. We are actually, today on the Married People podcast, we are looking at the question. We're asking the question, how do I stay connected with my spouse despite the craziness of life? Now, this is just something all of us feel. No one ever says, I've got too much time on my hands, or my life is too calm, or I have too much margin with my spouse. No one says that. You've never heard that. We all have super busy schedules. And so then what do we do with it? Do we just keep on plowing through and say, maybe this is just a busy season, it'll let up sometime, or do we take intentional steps? And that's kind of what we're talking about today, right, Ted?
It is. I'm like the random marriage knowledge person, but one of the things that it's just so fun learning all this crazy stuff. But one of the things that came out in the 60s is when technology had just started to take off, they actually went to the people that were over this, went to the government and basically said, hey, you should know this is about to take off and it's going to change people's everyday life. And so they did this study and they came back and they said, here's how it's going to impact everybody's life. That by the late 80s, early 90s, that the biggest issue of the time is going to be, what do we do with all this excess time? Because technology was going to give us back so much time. So the whole dilemma, and they said it was going to be known as the leisure period. And we're working 5 to 6 more hours on average a week than they did in the 60s. So there's something about...
So they said in that study that when technology happened, we were going to work less and we're going to have so much free time, and then technology came and we worked more all the time.
Exactly. They thought they really... think about it. It really has given us back time in terms of communication. I mean, just the way things move so fast. But we've taken those slots and we've filled them in with more busyness. And so I don't know if there's something that sits within us that if we're not being productive or if we're not busy, something's wrong. But nonetheless, I think most people listening right now goes, that's kind of me. I run really fast. We got a lot of things going on. I know everybody sitting around this table would certainly say that.
Yeah, for sure. And really at the heart of all that busyness, what we're talking about today is at the center of that busyness is our marriage and it's our family. And the question we're really asking today is what do we do with it? We know that we're all slammed. We know that, we filled in every single slot, in our day with something. Right. And so now what does that mean for our marriage? What do we need to do, now with that realization?
Yeah. Like, how do we stay connected with our spouse in the middle of the craziness of life? Like, how do we do that? Can we do that? Because when we don't, the repercussions are really scary. I mean, it becomes really quick. When we stop connecting, then we stop growing and we start getting distant from each other. And a lot of times couples have not made these deposits, these good deposits, and then they hit something bad and they don't have anything to withdraw from. Yeah. It's kind of like people, when they become empty nesters. When empty nesters, I don't know you anymore because we've been followed. Our lives have been revolved around kids. And so it's this thing of how important it is to stay connected.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Well, speaking of connection, that's one of the reasons why I'm really excited about today's interview. So, Ted, you sat down with Frank and Jessica Bealer and talked about the ways that they connect and the way that they navigate their busy schedule. So Frank is the executive director of leadership development here at Orange, and that's where we all work. And earlier this year, Frank released his first book called The Myth of Balance, where he talks all about work-life balance. And then Jessica, his wife, has been leading children's ministries for 17 years, so she's been super busy too. And she also is the author of her new book called Don't Quit. And together, Jessica and Frank have 4 children. So to say that they are busy people publishing books, leading children's ministries, the executive director of leadership, 4 kids, they've got a lot going on. And that's why, Ted, I'm really excited to hear what they had to say in their interview.
Frank and Jessica, welcome.
Thank you.
To the Married People Podcast.
Excited to be here.
Cool. You guys are the first couple that we've interviewed.
What? We feel special. I didn't know that.
I know. And so
important.
We've, you guys are having to be extra tight today and intimate because you're having to share a microphone.
That's it. I kind of like it.
You kind of like it?
I like it.
That's good.
His love language is physical touch, so he's happy right now.
He's happy. Well, Frank and Jessica, I'm so excited. Thanks for taking time to be with us today on the podcast. we're talking a little bit about how in the world do we still stay connected as a couple in the midst of all the crazy. You guys obviously are living the crazy with 4 kids. You've just moved to Atlanta not even a year ago, right? So major move.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we moved to Atlanta in June. Frank had actually been kind of coming back and forth for about 6 months, 5 or 6 months before that. So that was interesting. But we moved in June. We've got 4 kids, 7 sports between all of them. 7 sports. Yeah, that's a lot. And our daughter only has 1 sport, and that's competitive dancing, which is the equivalent of like 8 sports in one. So, so we really more have like, what is that? 8 plus 7. We have like 15 sports essentially is what we have.
Wow.
But yeah, it is. It's pretty busy. And of course, our jobs, our careers, our ministry is demanding as well. But we've kind of programmed our kids that journey is exciting, and so they were kind of thrilled about taking this new journey with us.
So great.
Yeah, it's been really cool to watch them kind of like find their rhythm and find their space, right? And trying to find the right teams and the right tribes and the right church. And it's definitely been challenging because, it was a pretty big move for us and a transition off of something we really love to something new that we love. And so it's been cool to see our family go through that together. And ultimately, I think we're better because of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's made us stronger in the end.
Well, one of the reasons I want to have you guys is I know you're so intentional about your marriage, and you guys are both, high octane leaders. You both just released a book. That is absolute crazy. We're going to talk about the book a little bit later on, but I want us to live in the tension a little bit because I know, for a lot of people listening, they're still trying to figure out this whole balance thing and how do we stay connected as a couple in the midst of all the crazy. What are you guys seeing as you've worked with couples and families? If you guys have been married, I think 16 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, 16 years. We've been together for 20. We were high school sweethearts.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
That is very sweet.
I was 16 and he was 18, and we started dating and never broke up. Yeah. And so we've been married 16 years and have 2 15-year-olds. So that happened pretty quick, right?
Right. I love this. And so what do you guys see? Because, you guys used to, Frank used to live in what, people that aren't in ministry would call the real world. Talk a little bit about that season.
Yeah, so in that season, coming straight out of college, having our first child and then another child, Jessica's working in the banking industry. I'm working in insurance and starting to travel more and more. My job required me to fly a lot of places. And so our schedule was really, really challenging. And we were feeling this tension, like we were having a hard time being on the same page and trying to find time to communicate. We loved being around each other, but it was just like, I don't know, especially with the travel that added this dynamic where it was just really stressful for us. And we've seen that be a recurring pattern for most marriages, right? There's this tension of like, when do you have time to talk and decompress? Because when you do get a chance to go on a date night, you kind of don't want to let that be the night that you solve all the world's problems. You're wanting to grow closer together.
Right.
And so we've seen over and over again, there's got to be some space to talk and work through your problems. And we went years without having that space and just struggling through it.
Yeah, we lead a young couples, a young married couples small group. And last week, actually, we were just sitting around the living room talking and working through some situations, some issues that they were having. And it almost came out like I had all the answers. And I was like, no. I want to make it clear that, marriage is a journey and that there are lessons learned every day of marriage. But I think that the point that I wanted them to see is that over time, if you are pushing forward, if you are advancing, if you're committed to finding healthy solutions to problems as they arise in your marriage, that over time, you will start to figure things out. And so we have, little things that we do to avoid things like talking about our kids all the time. Like, it's good to talk about your kids.
Sure.
But it's also good to talk about other things too. And so we have little tricks that we've used to kind of focus on our marriage when we're having conversations. And so I think just if you're committed to the relationship, if you're committed every single day to making it better, to being a better person for your mate, then I feel like over time the solutions will make themselves known.
Why do you guys think so many of us started marriage, kind of off on a rocky start? So that seems to be the story over and over. Why do you think that is for so many couples?
The biggest part is we don't understand what the other one needs. Yeah, all right. We've dated, and that was kind of a very different experience. And then we get married, and now we're trying to figure out what each other needs, how they need it. I've figured out really quickly when I got home that Jessica needed to kind of get some things out of her and into me, like share these ideas, these tensions that she was dealing with because they had been locked up in her brain. She was trying to solve problems all by herself, and now she needed another adult when she's dealing with stuff with our kids to talk through those things. And yet I was coming home exhausted or tired and not open for conversation.
You just wanted to decompress, and I was needing to fill you up, and you were like, I just need to decompress. It just wasn't working for a while.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of things that over time through longevity and marriage that we figure out, right? We find a way to figure out how to work in each other's rhythm. And what Jessica needed was she wanted to make sure that before the end of the night, we had a chance to talk through things. And she knew that nights would get crazy and busy, and especially with kids, and they kind of become all consuming. And so she thought that the best time to do that was right when I'd walk in the door to make sure it happened. And over time, we figured out, in fact, it's one of the simple things that we've learned to do, that we just need to guarantee that we have a set aside time that's going to happen later in the evening. She's happy to hold it back if she knows it's coming later.
Right. And some people would schedule a date night, like every week. Like they would be intentional about every Friday night or every Saturday night. Our schedule, unfortunately, doesn't really allow for that. I mean, you have a bunch of kids, you have a bunch of sports schedules that are going to vary throughout different seasons of the year. And so we can't do that. And so we found that for us, just a simple thing that we will do is every evening, once the chores have been done and the homework is done, sometimes it's even late at night, sometimes it's 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, that we will just go outside and go for a walk, just me and Frank. And it's quiet, it's dark. Most of the time, like we're in our pajamas, like walking around in the neighborhood. But it's our time just to, like I said, just to decompress, just to talk through the day. And also to kind of share like hopes, dreams, that kind of thing, like things that we're thinking about, ideas that we have, in ministry right now, which is our career. We always have ideas and dreams, and it's a time that you can share those and get feedback for. It's almost like a safe space. I call it a pocket of intimacy. Like you just have to find a time in your schedule that's a pocket of intimacy, and that is ours. When we come in, it's almost like there's a weight off of my chest because I've had a chance in a safe space to talk through the things that matter to me with the person who matters the most to me.
That's powerful. That's powerful. So, Jessica, it seems like at the first, it was more like, hey, this is this need I have. Frank, you need, he's coming in the door. I think there's something to be said there that we're pausing and saying, when is the best time for this pocket? Because the number one time that couples are fighting statistically is at the end of the day, when they reconnect at the end of the day. And I think a lot of that has to do with people come in and say, oh, my day was so tough. And the spouse goes, oh, you think your day was tough? You ought to have had my day.
Right.
How do you guys, as you talk, not get into a competition of whose day was the toughest?
Yeah, well, one of the things that makes it nice with our little walking routine that kind of changed things for us, because we haven't always walked. We didn't know we needed to do that. We would do it like while we were trying to do like nightly chores or kind of getting ready for bed. And Jessica's mind may have been really firing on some stuff. She may have really been carrying a heavy weight and thinking about some things. And my mind is kind of in vegetable status at that point, right? I'm just kind of like resting and done. And so I'm not in a position to receive that conversation and when it's hottest and freshest on her mind and vice versa. So what we found is that finding that pocket of time and being strategic about it meant that we knew that this conversation could go many different directions, but we're going to work through it together over the course of the walk. And every once in a while, we've got to take an extra lap, right? We're not done with stuff.
Yeah.
And I will tell you this, sometimes we walk a little faster than we intended because we're a little passionate. But now we've got some way to say, we're going to work through this together. This is why we're doing this walk. This is about us connecting. And so it sets the tone that as we walk out our garage door, we put on our shoes, walk out our garage door, that we're both into solving each other's challenges, burdens, supporting one another. That's why we're going on the walk. So it's almost like, I don't know that I always say that when we're in the bedroom, we're trying to solve a problem. She's kind of dropping something on me. I'm dropping something on her, and it's tense. I don't know that I always have a posture to say, yeah, just tell me what you need. I'll help you in any way I can. I may come across defensive or agitated, but when we go out for a walk, it's this mindset shift for us now to say, this is our time to help each other work through our day. So already I found that our defenses are back a little bit. We're a little more open. The conversation can kind of jump right in where it needs to, because that's why we're stepping out the door, is to make sure those conversations happen.
Yeah, and I think too, part of the key that you don't, when your spouse walks in the door, or if you're the spouse that's walking in the door and you don't explode on one another, I think part of the key is to just, if you know that there's this, like I said, this pocket of time, this pocket of intimacy, if you know it's coming, then it's okay for one spouse to say to the other one, hey, I want to talk to you about this. Can we talk about it during, we would say, our walk? Or if you're, maybe you have, I don't know, maybe you do dinner with the kids, but then you all have dinner together, or whatever it is. But if it's okay for me to wait to talk about the issues that matter to me, as long as I know it's coming, and as long as I know it's coming soon. And so it's not a big deal. It's not offensive to me if he says, hey, I know you want to talk about this, but let's talk about it tonight. I'm like, okay, well, that's in a few hours. I can wait a few hours to talk about something. I can't wait 2 weeks to talk about it.
Right.
Because then I'm just going to stuff my emotions and stuff. And then at some point I am going to explode on you. But I think if I know it's coming, then I'm okay to wait till a more appropriate time.
Pause. Frank, what happens between when you walk in the door that gets you ready for the walk? Like what makes you have the energy at that point? So if you're coming in exhausted, what gets you ready?
Yeah. So the first thing is I need to eat. Me as an individual, I may get home after all the other kids have eaten, and we don't do a lot of family dinners. We had the pressure that we had to sit down for dinner every night, but with our schedule, as we were talking about all these sports, we couldn't make it work, and it became this failure over us every time we couldn't get dinner to work. So now dinner is just a function to provide fuel for our bodies, right?
Right.
So I need to come in, I need to get some fuel, and then I want to be more present as a dad, and I feel like a lot of times I'm not where I need to be. And so for me to be able to come in and know that Jess and I are going to have our time later, but I can kind of shift gears and play or banter with the kids or help them solve a problem is really good for me. And I'll tell you, sometimes when we go for a walk, one of us is tired. And it's not like every night we're like, let's go for a walk. In fact, when we recently traveled internationally, we went for a walk, even traveling there, and it was 1:30 in the morning that time. But it had been a very chaotic day, and we knew we needed that stress release. So now we know, here's, if I could put it real simple, I know that I sleep better and my night ends better after a walk with Jessica. And so now, even though I may be tired, I'm going to have a better night of rest and a better start to my new day tomorrow if I take this walk, because we're going to solve some things together. And so now it's kind of intuitive, but early on I had to make a conscious decision to go, I may be tired. In fact, for a long time, Jessica knows this, for a long time on my way home from work, I would stop and get an espresso from Starbucks to give me a little extra pep coming into the evening, because I would be tired, especially when I traveled. And so that was enough to kind of carry me through. It's not like I needed another espresso or wanted it, but I was like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm energized, ready for this last little bit.
You know, one of the things I've noticed with marriage in general is the world can be falling apart around me. And as long as I'm good with Frank, I'm good. But as soon as there is tension, as soon as there's a break in the relationship, then the little things in life are too much. They are overwhelming. And so if Frank and I are good, I mean, it doesn't matter if, you know, one of my kids suddenly is failing a class that he had an A in 2 weeks ago, or, you know, or there's been a diagnosis of a family member that's very, very sad and unfortunate. Those things are hard to deal with, but I can deal with them. I can manage that stress if I'm good with Frank. I think a lot of times what ends up happening is there is stress and strain in relationships. This is what I've seen in the young married couples that we're leading right now. There's stress and strain in the relationship already, because they are just figuring each other out. They're trying to blend these lives. And so there's already there. And so then when something goes on at work, they blow up at the coworker, and they're really not all that mad at the coworker. They're frustrated that things aren't good at home, or if something goes wrong with your child, all of a sudden you're yelling at your child. And really it's a small problem. What the real problem is that there's a break in the relationship with your spouse. And so I feel like if you can, again, find these pockets of intimacy to keep your relationship healthy, it affects every other area in your life.
And when you think about oneness, and I know that's so ethereal and we hear it at weddings and the whole thing, but you think, when we're broken, I feel broken.
Yes.
Like when we're whole, I feel more whole. I feel more safe, more solid. When I think about your walk, there's a couple of things that pop to mind that I want to ask you guys about. One of the things that the lows, Nancy and I learned the hard way, was she would start sharing all the things, especially when we were first married, problems, things that were going on. Well, as a guy, I'd get in fix-it mode. I would jump in.
Yes.
I would go, we need to, then we do this. Well, and she would get so frustrated with me. And so I took this, wow, she really doesn't respect my opinion at all. And so it started to hurt. And I was like, wow, she doesn't respect what I have to say. And so we would go round and round. And then she says to me one night, she goes, I don't want you to fix it. I want you to feel it, which as a man made zero sense to me.
Wow, that's so great. I don't want you to fix it. I want you to feel it. That's great.
And there's a book called How to Improve Your Marriage Without Talking About It. And it's a secular book, two psychologists that wrote it. He said his example was that women are in an emotional puddle sometimes, and they look at their husbands and they tell them what's going on. They want them to step in the puddle with me. And he goes, what guys want to do is rip them out of the puddle. How do your walks, how does this dynamic play out with the two of you, and the fix it and feel it dynamic when you're on your walk?
Well, I, at some point, came to a really clear conclusion. Yeah, we're one, but I cannot read her mind. And we've had enough tension built over the course of the years in our marriage where we realize that that's not going to work if we're dependent on that. And so she now, she does such a great job of this. She now tells me what she needs on the front end. She will literally say to me, I need to talk to you about something. I don't need you to fix it. Just hear me out. And so now she has set me up for success because I know how to interact in the conversation, because it doesn't matter. I've heard everything you just said before, right? This whole idea of they don't want us to fix it, they want us to feel it, some way or another. I've heard that before. Every single time she brings me a problem, if she doesn't tell me she doesn't need me to fix it, I want to fix it. Everything in me. I literally, just a few weeks ago, we were going for a walk. She told me about something. I just wanted to turn around and go deal with one of my kids right then. I was going to go fix it right now. And that's not at all what she needed. She had already handled it so well. What she actually needed to hear once she told me how she solved it was that she was doing a good job and the way she managed it. She had handled everything. She didn't need me at all, but she still needed to get it off her chest. And so she's done such a great job. And I think I could be more intentional of letting her know as we're talking through something, the need or the end game of what I need for her, how the filter I need for her to listen to what I'm sharing.
Yeah. And I think for ladies, for us women, I think that we also have to become more self-aware that our husbands are fixers. And so we have to let them know, like you said, like in advance before we speak it, what we need. But you also have to ask for what you want. Like at the end, like whenever you've told them, you've decompressed, you've whatever, you have to ask specifically for what it is that you're wanting. Because if you're just like, if you just present something and you've got a husband that's a fixer, and most men are fixers, it almost is like a protective nature, like you're mine to protect, which is for a woman that's great, that feels good. But then when that nature it almost feels like it backfires on us, because I just needing to vent, and here you are trying to go and run off and do things. And so I think at the end of it, we have to be self-aware enough to know what it is that we're asking. So sometimes I'll say, Frank, I've got this problem. I just need you to hear me out first. And so then, I'll tell him the issue or whatever that I'm having. And then I'll say to him, I need 2 or 3 ideas. What are 2 or 3 ideas? And then it's not the appropriate time when he's giving me his ideas to say, no, I don't like that one. Or no, I'm not going to, just receive whatever it is. It's going to essentially meet that need for him to fix it. And so I think a lot of times we have to ask for what it is that we are wanting, and then we just have to stop talking and listen.
That's so powerful. Like, give me a couple of ideas. That's so powerful. Because I've tried to explain it to Nancy before. I said, when you tell me what's going on, it's kind of like I would drive by and your car's broken down, and I look at you and go, oh, that's just tough, and driving away. That's how that feels to me when you're explaining what's going on. So I think too, it's just giving each other the most generous explanation, going, you know what, he's trying to rescue me right now, but to know each other and what the other one needs. In the same book, How to Improve Your Marriage Without Talking About It, they talk about this dynamic that when you say to a man, and this is why I like your guys' walks, when you say to a man, we need to talk and I need you to look at me when you're talking to me. I want you to, you have good eye contact. What they have found that when you say that to a man, his body gets flooded with a chemical called cortisol that makes him very fidgety and even more distracted more than ever. So the more a woman's like, I need for you to look at me, look at me, look at me, he's feeling all over the place. And what's happening, and I think you guys are a great example of this, that men can talk better when they're driving down the road, when they're raking leaves with each other. Right. And you guys have turned this thing into, hey, this walk. And I don't know, do you feel like that's a dynamic with you, Frank, that they're moving and you're, I've been watching you in this interview and you're just like me, you're looking around and you're seeing what's going on and checking things out. Do you feel like that's been a helpful dynamic? Is there something for a man in the walk that's helpful for you?
I think so. It makes me feel like I'm expending some energy, and we don't walk holding hands staring at each other. That would just be weird, right? And so part of it is she doesn't have the expectation of me to look her in the eyes. When we try to unpack stuff in the kitchen, I've got to sit still and stare at her as she's talking, and I don't know what to do with that. Like you said, I'm like looking around, kind of taking things in. But as a walk, if I'm walking forward, making sure I don't trip and fall, that's not in any way communicating to her that I'm not listening. We still have another task that we're performing. We're walking across the street. We're looking at stop signs. And it also gives me an opportunity, because she'll get really focused on the conversation, for me to reach out and stop her so she doesn't walk out in front of a car. And so it feels like I'm winning in some little things along the way. And so we're doing that together, right?
Yeah, one of the things, because we're specifically in ministry, I know a lot of people listening aren't in ministry, but even in your career, there are so many things that we are involved in that are unending. And so you may fix a part of a problem, but you've got another part to fix. Or you may fix this problem and then you've got another problem. In ministry specifically, the work is never ending. It's always ongoing. There's a joke that there's a reason why pastors love to mow their lawn, because they can finish and it feels complete. And honestly, it's the same with the idea with the walk for us, because we may have unpacked a whole lot of stuff. We may not have all the answers for how we're going to solve the things that we are dealing with. But at the end of the walk, we both go in, we've exercised, and it feels like we've completed something. And so it feels as if we've achieved something. Maybe we even really haven't achieved all that much other than just making each other feel better about the situations. But at the end of the walk, it makes us feel like we've accomplished something, and we've accomplished it together.
You know what I love so much about this, you guys, is we say all the time on this podcast is marriage is easier than you think, that we've made marriage very, very complicated. And we always want to say, what is one simple thing that people can go and do? And so when you start thinking about, when you ask people, what does it take to have a great marriage? They start giving you all these really complex things, or they're confused or frustrated, or their hands are up in the air going, I have no idea. And what you guys are saying is a simple walk each day that you're committed to, where you've learned how to have the conversations where, this is what you need from me. Jessica, you've said, okay, I want to hear some ideas. That is so powerful. So again, we always ask each week, what is one simple thing that couples can go and do? I think obviously you guys have been so great with the application, but what would you say from a broader sense? Let's say somebody, maybe the walking's not their jam, or what would you say, what's one simple thing you would encourage listeners to do today?
It's about creating that, what did you call it, Jess, that pocket of intimacy. Yeah, so finding where's that space. I believe it needs to be outside of your bedroom, that you've got to go somewhere and have, this is our time where we're going to reconnect. We may not solve the world's problems, but we're saying to one another, we're making each other's burdens and challenges a priority. We're going to navigate those together. So setting aside time for that and being focused on that. One thing funny about the walk is that sometimes we walk slow, sometimes we walk fast. We joked around about that. But
Sometimes we walk in the rain.
yeah, that's what I was about to say.
We will get
In
an
the rain.
umbrella.
If it's really cold, I will put on 5 layers because I don't
Yep.
like being cold, and I'll look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow walking down the street. But it's kind of like our thing
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
So why apart from the bedroom? Like, what's the distinction there?
Well, first of all, bedroom has other activities that can go on, and so we don't need to bring stress there. And also, that you end up in your bedroom for the rest of the night. And so there's no closure to it. And so you're continuing it into laying at bed, talking, those last few little comments that may be jabs or unhealthy. When we tried to process it while we're trying to take showers, getting ready for bed, actually getting to bed, the conversation just lingered. We couldn't put a bow on it. And one of the challenges is with this walk, if I could just back up for just a second, that I see is that if I've got a problem that I'm really wrestling with that I need to talk to Jessica about it, one of the things I have to remember is that I've been wrestling with it for a prolonged period of time. I've had hours to think about this. Now I'm giving it to her and she has minutes to respond. And so the walk gives us time to kind of work through it and give her space to process it. But what ends up happening when you bring it to the bedroom is that you've kind of got off that topic. You've gone on to some other things for the day or talking about tomorrow or whatever. But now you're just having time to process it. And so now as you're laying down for bed, you're like, well, what about? And now you're like chiming in with something else. And it can build up all these emotions and tensions where it's like, well, now we have a safe place for this conversation to be continued tomorrow night on a walk. And so you're just keeping it out of the bed. I just know I am not a good decision maker as I'm falling asleep. And I'm going to give emotional responses, unwise responses. I'm going to get hateful. I'm going to be grumpy. And I'm not going to say the things I need to say. And so by making sure that those intimate encounters and conversation happen outside the bedroom, you're letting there be some closure to that and letting the bedroom be for what it's for.
Yeah, and I feel like, too, that different ideas. So you have to find something that both you and your spouse enjoy doing. So Frank and I really enjoy fitness. So we work out together a lot at the gym, but this is also, in addition, kind of in that whole world of fitness. Like, we enjoy that. It's something that we both enjoy. If your spouse does not like to walk, you should not force them to go on a walk. You're not going to get anything productive during that time because he or she is going to be miserable. And so you've got to find something that you both enjoy doing so it kind of unarms you. Like, I'm going to have fun doing this no matter what. But now I get to spend time with the person who matters most to me. So one of the reasons why I mentioned eating is because I have a friend who she has 3 kids under the age of 7. And
bless her.
I know. And so really her meals, one of them is a baby. And her meals, their family mealtime is really her trying to sneak a couple bites in between, calming the toddler down from the tantrum and keeping everyone in their high chair and all that. So it's not a true quality time family meal type thing. And so she and her husband realized that what was happening. And so now family dinner time is him and her just kind of getting the kids fed and getting them, in their bath time. And then him and her sit down and eat. And it's kind of the same thing that you were talking about. You're eating, you have something to do. You don't have to sit there and stare at the person in the eyes. So there's an activity to do, and their time every evening is dinner time. And it's him and her every evening. So it's almost like they have a date every night at 7:00.
Oh, it's brilliant.
So I think it's just finding something. Maybe you like bike riding, or maybe you like, going to the movies. I'll tell you, going to the movies, the car ride home from the movies, you have so much to talk about.
Right.
It's such a great time to connect. So finding something that you both enjoy doing it together, and then using that to spur on the intimacy.
So powerful.
I really think that as you're finding your thing, consistency is really key. Because if I don't know when we're going to get to talk again in a private, uninterrupted way, it's going to build up and explode. Like I don't know how to keep it in. I need to process stuff. And some stuff that Jessica and I talk about on our walk are things that we're talking about to solve problems for tomorrow. Not just lifelong issues about the trajectory of our kids' future. We'll talk about those things too sometimes. But sometimes we just need to make some decisions or figure out how we're going to handle a situation. And so knowing that we have this consistent, regular time together just takes a world of pressure off.
So I feel like that you are like master of consistency because that's kind of you. I mean, you wrote a book about it. So like, I already know what your answer is going to be. Is it okay if I ask him a question?
Please. Yeah, absolutely.
But like, how do you recommend people to stay consistent with anything, but especially this?
Yeah, so I'm really passionate about just everything is on a calendar.
Right.
Every single thing. Family time,
I
our
knew you were
family
gonna say
walks.
that.
Yeah, so I have family time on the calendar. Our walks are on my calendar. We do the same thing every night, but it's on my calendar. And the reason I put it on my calendar is because in the event there's a night where we don't get to walk, I have to delete that off my calendar or move it, and it puts this weight on me to realize in that moment, we didn't get our walk tonight. We definitely have to get it tomorrow night. And so I think one of the challenges that we have with our time and how we operate with our families and manage everything is that because we have good intentions with time, but that time isn't always scheduled, we don't feel the fallout when we move it. Because it wasn't there. We moved that block. So if Jessica and I go multiple nights without a walk, I know that's a bad idea. But if it's not scheduled, I may not feel it. I may not calculate all that in my mind. I may not remember how long it's been. And so by putting it on the calendar really has made a difference for us.
Yeah.
So great. You guys, this is one of my favorite episodes. I am loving this. So here's what I'm hearing. Make sure I'm hearing you guys correctly. So let's make this super practical. And then I want to hear about your guys' books. I mean, what couple do you sit down? Hey, we've both come out with a book. And not the same book. I love this. But the consistency, like, it's got to be a consistent thing. We know it's happening. I know in my heart, she knows in her heart, he knows in his heart that it's going to happen. Timing's very important. It can't happen right out of the gate. It needs some space there. It might need an espresso, might need just some space to do that. You got to mutually both like it. Like, this is a good thing for both of us. And guys, having an activity that's moving is important. Is there anything that you guys would add to that?
I think that's a great summary.
Yep. Yeah, I do think that one of the things that I've kind of learned is that there will be seasons when I need the walk more than he needs the walk. And then there's seasons when he needs the walk more than I need the walk. I mean, literally, in the last month, I was going through a situation where I was very, very, very stressed about something that mattered a lot to me. And I told him, I'm just telling you, for the next few nights on our walk, we're going to end at this place. I already know, like, I'm still processing and working through this. Please just be patient with me. And he was so incredibly patient. About 2 or 3 days after I had finally like processed what I needed to process and I had peace, he was going through something and he said, okay, ditto, like, I'm going to need you to just listen to me because I'm going to be venting for the next couple of days and I just need you to be patient with me. But here's the key, like when you said consistency and Frank talked about it as well, here's the key. Because we know it's always going to happen, it's fine that it's 2 or 3 days of him talking more than me. And it's fine that there's 2 or 3 days where, I'm talking a little bit more than him on the walk. Because we know it's going to consistently happen. So it's okay for me to take a back seat right now to his emotions and the things that he's feeling, or vice versa. It's okay for him to say, for the next couple of nights, she just needs to talk. She just needs to process. Because we know it's going to happen every day.
That's so great. That's so great. So it's not like, we go on vacation once a year and we're going to waste it. And so we're trying to cram it all in. You're going, we're going to do this because it's consistent. It's who we are. Yeah. It's what we do. Hey, you guys, tell me a little bit. Tell me about your books. You guys have both could just come out with books. And so here are people that just come out with books, 4 kids, 27 sports. Wow. Make us all feel a little bit bad. But the great thing is what you've written is very helpful for other people.
That was the goal. We both wanted to write books that were relevant and practical. We both kind of live. I mean, if you're in ministry the way that we are, then you have to kind of live in the practical solutions. What am I going to do like this weekend, in ministry? My book is called Don't Quit. It has a little subtitle called It's Monday, I Quit. And I feel like everyone out there can relate to that. Sure. Mondays are rough days because you are solving the problems from the weekend or the week before, but you also have a whole nother, week's worth of work ahead of you. This is my 17th year in children's ministry. I started when I was 19 and didn't have a clue what I was doing at 19. I can't believe that anyone trusted me with their child at the age of 19. But over the 17 years, I have had I genuinely say that Frank and children's ministry have been the journeys of my life, because I just could not have imagined, looking back, what my life would have been like without children's ministry. And so this is really it's a leadership book. A lot of my examples are from my experiences, which is in children's ministry, but everyone that's read it has said, this is really just a leadership book, and it's principles that you can take and apply every day to help you stick with it. And so it's not a whole book. It's a pretty long book. It's 17 chapters. It's not 17 chapters of here's how to stick with it. There's one chapter about appreciation, which is how to appreciate the people around you so that they'll stick with you for the long haul. There's another one about having healthy situation or having healthy conversations that involve conflict, because especially for us women, we avoid conflict at all costs. And so here is, specifically how you deal with that. So there's little like practical chapters about how to deal with the things that may arise so that you can stick with it for the long haul. And so that's kind of what mine's about.
It's called Don't Quit.
Don't Quit. Yep. It's Don't Quit. It's on social media. You can do hashtag Don't Quit Book. It's available on Amazon or don'tquitbook.com. My site that I run is familyministry.church. And I post at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, and everything from there's podcasts on there, but there's also just blogs. I'm a multi-site specialist. I've launched 16 locations in my ministry and church locations, and so I talk a lot about what that looks like on the blog. So familyministry.church is where, if you want to get in contact with me, that's where you go. But hashtag Don't Quit Book or don'tquitbook.com is where you can check out the book.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that. We work at the same company, Orange, and we really want to help church leaders do that. So, Jessica, I'm so glad you did that. I know with children's ministry, it's kind of like parenting. You don't get a lot of kudos from the people you're serving.
It's so true.
They don't know how yet, right?
They do. They come back like 12 years later when their kid is grown, and they're like, thank you for that. And that's fulfilling for sure.
Right.
But in the moment when you're handing them their screaming toddler, they're just like, what did you do to my kid?
Right. Well, thanks for encouraging people not to quit, because we need that. All right, Frank, what about you? Tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah, sure. It's called The Myth of Balance, Thriving in the Tension of Work and Life and Ministry. And just, I have come to the conclusion, especially as we worked through our marriage and all the responsibilities we've had the privilege of having, to realize that balance may not even exist. We're pursuing something in our families and in our work life, and we're like, well, if I could just get everything balanced. And I'm having a hard time finding anybody that's balanced, right? And so it's like, oh, you just need more balance in your life. I'm like, well, introduce me to somebody that's balanced. And what I quickly discovered is those people don't seem to exist. And so the book is us working through, well, if balance isn't our goal, because I don't want a goal that I can't achieve at all, right? That's not fun at all. So if balance isn't our goal, what is our goal? How do we become more productive? How do we manage all this chaos and feel like we're thriving? Jesus in Scripture says, in John 10:10 says, I've come to give you life and give it to you to the full. And I look at our schedules and the way we operate our lives, and I'm like, I don't think this is what he meant sometimes, of the full life. I don't think he just meant chaos. And so the book is just a way, an exercise, a very practical formula in there to say, maybe you can take a different approach to some of those things that you know they're going to happen. You just don't know when they're going to happen next. And let those things not derail your life and your week and create so much tension.
Well, I'll tell you what, you guys, I think we always want to have people in here that, they're great at what they do. No doubt about it. But they're also great at family and life. And you guys, you live it out. Thank you for doing that. Thank you so much for today. It's so helpful. I mean, the thing that charges me up is to think, oh man, if somebody listens to this on a run or driving to work, is it going to matter to them? Yeah. It does, you guys. So thank you for that so much.
Thanks for letting us just come and talk with you and everyone else. It's, like when your family matters to you as much as it does, and I'm sure everyone would probably agree with this, but when something matters to you, it's enjoyable to talk about it. So thanks for having us on.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been great.
Thanks, guys.
Well, Ted, thank you so much for that conversation with Frank and Jessica. That was really interesting to hear how, despite the craziness in their lives and all that they have going on, that they have figured out a way to set aside intentional time to connect. And, as we always like to do here, we like to boil, big ideas down to one simple things. And the one simple thing that you guys talked about this week was finding a pocket of time to connect as a couple each day. That was what Jessica challenged all of us to do. And so my question for you two here, Afton and Ted, is, are you guys doing this? What do you think that this would help you guys? What are your thoughts on this one simple challenge this week? Because usually, Afton, I know I can already see you getting excited.
I have a lot of things to say. I have a lot of opinions
Usually our
about
one
this
simple
topic.
things are like, fill in the blank here, or say this to your spouse. This is a little bit more like, find a pocket of time. There's a little bit more
Are
to
you
this
saying that
one.
I can't do simple things that are a little more difficult than simple?
I'm saying, Afton, you
This
are
is a too advanced one simple thing for me.
You're a great person, Afton.
Here is what I think about all the things that were just said.
With your hands on
My
your
hands
hips.
are on my hips because I have a lot of things to say about it. First of all, pocket of time. The idea of pocket of time feels like a lot of pressure. Like, to shove all of my connection time into like a pocket of time, like find a pocket of time to connect, sounds really great, sounds good. Also sounds like a lot of pressure because
Well, that's what I was
guess what?
saying.
I just sometimes want to go home and just chill, and we connect over something else. So let me tell you what my simple thing is going to be.
Don't point your finger at me.
I'm not wagging it. I'm just pointing it in a way that is, let me tell you, the thing I'm going to say is that I would rather my one simple thing, like, first of all, Hudson can't go on a walk and talk at the same time. No, it's not about gender. It's just he cannot multitask. And when I say he can't multitask, I mean he cannot be using his right hand and his left hand at the same
Now,
time.
Afton, it's not go for a walk every day. It's just find a pocket of time.
I agree. So here's what I'm going to do with my
Okay.
pocket of time. Like, I'm going to find a pocket of time, but also usually our pockets of time are right before we go to bed and normally I fall asleep. So instead, for my pocket of time, what I would rather do, and you guys can tell me if this is a bad idea, but
don't know if we
for
can.
my pocket of time, I want to spend my 15 minutes or whatever doing something fun. I want to like play a game, or I want to
Yeah.
play Mario
That's
Kart.
great.
I want to like do something fun, because for me, and maybe it's because I'm like, I don't have the same like emotional sensitivity as other people. If I'm having fun, that's when I'm like, oh, by the way, like I did this today. Or like if we're playing Rock'em Sock'em Robots, I can be like, you know what made me mad today? And tell him, and then we can connect over
Perfect.
that. And it's not like a stare at each other and then tell each other everything that you want to
Yeah.
say about the
I
day.
think that's awesome, Afton. That was great. That works.
you. Yes.
And that
Thank
is
you.
I approve, and my vote might not count. I'll leave that up to Ted, the marriage expert, to tell you that counts. But I think that's good.
Okay, Ted, does it count?
I think it counts 100%. In fact, I think there's research that backs it up that says words don't lead to connection, that connection leads to words.
Ooh.
Yeah. That when we're connected, we get words. So that's all you're saying, and I totally agree 100%.
Yeah.
That's what you were
I think
saying.
if I just mentally put the pressure on the situation, like, oh my gosh, at 8:00 we're gonna have to go for a walk, and I'm gonna have to tell him all the things that happened today, and I will like just work it up too much in my brain, and I won't even want to talk.
That's a good point. And I think we need to say that more often. It's one of the things I think try to keep in front of us is that every couple is unique, and we say you want you to become your best us. And for you and Hudson, that walk. That doesn't work for us. It obviously works for Frank and Jessica, but it's great for, and we hope everybody's listening going, hey, this is never about putting you in some kind of box. Like, oh, now you're required to go on a walk, and you're like, oh, it's not my jam. It's not that at all. But I think what you've done a beautiful job is just translating what they talked about for you and Hudson, because we're the same way too. Like Nancy Lowe, if I told her we were going to have a walk every day where we're going to get all this stuff off our chest, that would be hard for her as well. I'd probably dig it, but not so much for
And
her.
that's probably true too. Like Hudson would probably like it. Hudson would
Right.
probably like, he likes like the planned time. He literally cannot walk and have a conversation at the same time.
love that,
So I just know
man. Yep.
he can't do it.
Yep.
Well, for me, in addition to when I get home, I put down my cell phone for 30 minutes, and that is our chance to connect. So no matter what we're doing, and we have tried the more like go for a walk or sit down on the couch or whatever, that doesn't really work, but it is just like whatever we're doing, that first 30 minutes I'm home and we're both home together. Whether it's making dinner or whether it's, just, doing whatever we're doing, those are our 30 minutes to just reconnect. And so that would be it for me. And I will say,
but what are you doing? Like you put your phone down and you reconnect during those 30 minutes. Like, are you just staring at each other on the couch? Or are you just pitter pattering around the house?
That's what I was saying, is that it's not just sitting down on the couch.
Yeah.
It's usually, we're making dinner, or we're doing laundry, or we're, getting stuff ready for the next day, or packing lunches or something.
Yeah.
And those are just our kind of, moments to walk around the house together and just not have the distraction of the TV or our phones. It works for us, because like you just said, we have tried to sit down for 30 minutes and we can't do that, So what about you, Ted?
Yeah, I think, as Jessica pointed out, Frank's very, very organized, and that really works for them. And he puts it on his calendar, and when he has to delete it, he feels it. And I love the fact that he feels, compelled that it's something he didn't do. He has to delete it off the calendar. So that says a lot about how he's wired. I think for us, we should probably, if they were talking, I thought, wow, we're not as calendar as that, but I feel like that there is this, gosh, I hate to say this word, but it's the only one I can think of. There's this more organic thing with the two of us, where we kind of, when we connect, when I'm thinking about this, I oddly keep thinking about the bathroom. I'm talking about getting ready for work, and at nighttime and different things. And that's really a legal place for us to lock the door. The kids no, we don't want you to be in here right now. It's not that we don't love you. It's we could be naked. And so I think that's where we connect, and that's where we talk. The other thing, we watched. This is terrible, but we watched. No, it's not terrible. Doggone it! It's us. Speaking of us, we watch. I know you guys don't like it. We were. This Is Us, and it is so cathartic because they are going to make you cry every episode. So she literally, it's always the same thing. We'll watch a scene, and then we'll both afterwards going, "Oh, they're trying to kill us."
Why would you do that to yourselves?
Because it's I don't know why, but we love it. But we love it. But she will say to me sometimes, I can't do two. It's just too much emotionally. I don't know. I guess it's cathartic. We love the idea of families. We love the idea of the whole us, that every us is different. We love the idea of people winning. And it's just a beautiful family. I'm watching a husband on there who has gone through a lot, that really wants to be a good husband. And I love that, because I feel like I empathize with him. So
I'll like it in 10 years when it's not cool anymore.
Yeah. It's stupid. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're probably like that girl that listened to weird music in college you really didn't like, but you did it that people would think you were cool.
I get on the train way later on purpose.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, do you guys remember Tamagotchis? And I bring it back.
Wow, that's a throwback.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, before you just said something, you were a little bit more transparent than I was. You said you guys reconnect in the bathroom, whatever, in the morning and evening. And if I'm honest,
I'm so excited about what TJ's about to say.
You were poking, so what are you doing? Usually I'll have just went and worked out or something.
Oh.
No.
I was like, TJ's never gotten this transparent on the podcast.
So it's usually I'm getting home in my workout stuff, and I'm going upstairs, and I'm always like, Terry, you coming? And so that's where, we're not doing that. But I'm just I'm showering, getting ready, changing clothes, and she's standing in the bathroom, and we're just hanging out. She's standing outside, and I'm, showering off. And that's one of the weird, if I'm transparent, that's one of the weird places that we're able to connect. And that's the moment
my bathroom's so small.
Well,
we can even both fit in there at the same time. We're like an HGTV show at the before, where you're bumping elbows if you're in there at the same time. It literally is. That's what our bathroom is.
That's amazing.
I'm going to tell Buds that we need a better bathroom for our marriage.
That's the tweet of the day right there. That we need a better bathroom for our marriage.
So that way you guys can decompress in there at the same time.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
But no, I mean, you said that, and I was like, you know what? That's really it. And I just think one of the neat things that we can do here is be honest about how weird and quirky sometimes these ways we connect are. That it isn't always the couch, and it isn't, and what works for Frank and Jessica is the walk, and that's awesome. And then what works for Afton are playing games. What works for me is, when I'm showering, and what works for Ted is when you guys are in the bathroom doing whatever you guys are doing, and you got the doors locked, kids can't come in. And that's just, I think that's neat. And that really speaks to what we're always talking about here, is that what works for your us might not be what works for every us, but it it works for you, and that's what matters here. So, well, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much, Ted, for bringing Frank and Jessica onto the podcast. And thank you for joining us for the Married People podcast. We hope that today's episode helped you realize that marriage is a little easier than you think. And before we finish up with this episode here, before we wrap things up, this is the last episode of the year for us, the last episode of 2017. But we just want you to know we'll be back. We're going to take a few weeks off. We're going to enjoy Christmas, and you're going to enjoy Christmas, and then we will reconvene in 2018, and we will have a blast.
And we're going to come back prepped with so many family stories.
Yeah, you know, Afton, I can't wait to hear what you have to share about
Probably
Christmas.
just a million really great family stories.
Well, but so this is the last episode of 2017. We will see you in 2018. But before then, if you aren't subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and subscribe. That way, when we restart back in 2018, your podcast feed will automatically download those new episodes. And finally, for more great resources to make your marriage better, check out Ted's book, Your Best Us. You can find it on Amazon, and you can also find it by visiting our website, marriedpeople.org. That's also where you will find links to Frank's book, The Myth of Balance, and Jessica's book, Don't Quit. You'll find those links at marriedpeople.org. And then join us in 2018 for a whole new batch of episodes. Until then, I'm CJ.
I'm Afton.
I'm Ted.
And thank you for listening.